not a nerd.
Nerds.
Nerds.
Nerds!
I'm not kissing a nerd.
What is a nerd?
Nerd! Holy crap, are we nerdy?
Welcome, Nerdables, to episode 97. This week, I'm joined with Kris and Mikey. Everybody else has vacated the premises. And we are going to be talking about how Hollywood is rebooting itself. Welcome, guys. Any news that you saw this week other than it seemed like everybody was talking about Fantastic Four in the wrong way?
Well, that was the weekend more so than the week.
Anything that you guys saw that was pressing that you want to talk about first
Nope.
before we get started?
Dragon Ball Z is good.
Yeah?
Yeah.
So, on the big screen.
So was that the big movie, the good movie release for the weekend?
Yes.
Well, that week, last week too. What did it release on the 4th or whatever?
Oh, did it?
So
Oh.
during
Going
the
through
week.
the week and the weekend.
So was it? It's better than Evolution, I guess.
Well, anything's better than the live action.
Right.
Live action for a cartoon, that's hard.
Well, that's what I was going to ask you because I know you guys went
Alvin and the
yesterday.
Chipmunks, Smurfs.
Yeah.
Suck compared to the cartoon, so.
Well, is there some things?
Well, at least they
that
put
should?
the thing with Chipmunks and Smurfs though is it has an animated element to live
Yeah.
action. But yes, I know what you're saying.
Yeah.
It's something like Dragon Ball Z. Is it impossible to translate to live action?
I think it's not impossible to translate, but that's the thing is you have to translate it. You can't just adapt.
You can't interpret it. You have to.
Well, no, that's yeah, I guess it would be the other way. You'd have to interpret it rather than translate it.
Right.
Because it has such a particular style to it, and it doesn't work in live action because nobody can fight that fast.
Yeah.
And so when you speed it up with people, it just looks like sped up film.
Yeah.
So the laser blasts look weird or something like that. When we saw
This is the American version, though, too. I mean, you look at the Attack on Titan live action trailer, it looks pretty good. The Japanese are going to
we'll see what happens
do well
with that
with
too. I've heard people say that isn't very good either.
Some of the Titans look odd, but I don't know.
Do you think that the reason that like G.I. Joe and Transformers and some of those aren't doing well as live action films is because they're translating them from cartoons?
No, Transformers isn't doing well because it's written horribly after that first one.
Well, they're trying to make a story out of
Yeah, G.I. Joe, it's
cartoon
again, I
elements.
think it's an interpretation rather than a direct translation. That first film tried so hard to get into that superhero, super technology, super new stuff vibe, and it
Right.
just doesn't work, where the second one was much more of a military film, which was better. It wasn't fantastic.
That's
but
what it
was
should be
better.
in the first place.
Yeah, I mean, it's an adaptation. Like the G.I. Joe thing from the stories that I'd read is the original draft of G.I. Joe was very much a espionage thriller. The techno elements weren't really there, but it was an anti-terrorist film in which Cobra was, this big terrorist organization that had weapons that were better than anything that the United States would have had. But it was the superhero stuff and the super suits and crap
Sort of
like that.
Bond and Indiana Jones and all that should sort of be thrown
yeah,
in.
but it was more of like a Bourne film idea of, but in terms of them being more of a military unit, though, a full unit that would be after him. And from the story that I remember, I don't know if this is true. This is the story I remember reading, is that they had Larry Hama read the script and he said, this isn't G.I. Joe.
Right.
There's no difference. So Hama's on record as saying when he saw G.I. Joe Resolute, the Warren Ellis Bible penned internet series that they showed on TV.
The one that was on USA, yeah.
No. Well,
No,
yeah,
not
it
USA,
wasn't
Cartoon Network.
Yeah, whatever it was, the Cartoon Network, and that was in small installments. So in an interview, Hama said that he hated it because it wasn't G.I. Joe. It was too
Even though the
dark,
fans and everybody loved
and
it.
that's the only thing that fans have related to.
Right.
As someone who I talked to at one point, who I can't name, said this is the only thing that older fans have related to in the entire time that G.I. Joe has attempted to be reboot through Sigma 6, through Valor versus Venom, through all of these different attempts to reboot not only the figures but the media, a TV series or whatever. The only thing that fans that were kind of our age that grew up with the 3 3/4 G.I. Joe in the 80s, that's the only thing that they really love. They want something harder. They want something that...
Well, that's why G.I. Joe Cobra was such a success for Mike Costa.
Yeah, but the complaint for people for G.I. Joe Cobra where people were saying it's just an espionage book.
Right.
It doesn't matter who the characters are. I disagree with that because if you are playing on the nostalgia of it, very much a lot of the things in the Dragon Ball Z movie that we saw played on the nostalgia for me because not seeing those characters in such a long time in terms of a weekly series, when you see them use their moves, the Destructo Disc for Krillin, when he shaves his head,
Right.
the Kamehameha. It's all stuff that you're like, oh yeah, that's
those
cool,
characters.
Yeah,
that's
but
what
it's-
they're supposed to be and portrayed as.
and you haven't seen it in a while.
Yeah.
So but that wasn't the only thing that was there. And obviously, there's going to be a lot of nostalgia in a movie which features the return of a favorite villain. But when you make it, when you're taking a property and adapting it into a new type, I think there is value in that, rather than the complaint that I kept hearing for G.I. Joe Cobra from people on fan boards was it's just an espionage book. It's just a spy book. It doesn't matter who these characters are. I don't think that's true, because you are playing on the memories of Tomax and Zaymot. You are playing on the memories of the Baroness, and you are playing on the memories of Chuckles and the way that the G.I. Joe book is, and Jinx and all of that. So I think that type of thing works, and that's why I thought if you made a really good military techno thriller as the first G.I. Joe film, you would have succeeded.
So why is it okay for going right into Fantastic Four that came out this week?
Fantastic Four.
That
yeah.
Originally was projected to do 47 million. Now they're saying it's going to do 26 million.
I'm
And
shocked it's even making that.
why do you think that franchise is having so much trouble when they're just trying to do a interpretation of the comic book?
I think the whole Marvel Fox Studios is getting in the way of a lot of the
Do you think that
mainstream movies. Like,
the two different studios are
the-
tripping over themselves, or is it just
Well, if you're talking specifically with this film, one of the complaints is that it's just made really quickly in order to get the rights back. I mean, the film was shot on location in 3 weeks.
right? Well, we had originally said, I think a year or two ago, that this film was probably never going to make it to theaters.
I said
And-
I would have been shocked if it was released, and because it just the deal is it only has to be in production. But in order to produce that film, even cheaply, you're still spending so much money. You have to try and recoup some of it.
Right.
And these movies do, as terrible as they are. Everyone keeps telling me, why would they keep doing it? Why wouldn't they let it go? Why do they keep making bad movies? Because you look at something like Spider-Man 3, which is a gigantic piece of shit, and it's made more money than any of the Sam Raimi Spider-Mans.
Yeah.
Because you just have to have that one hit. You just have to have one that makes sense. Look at X-Men. X-Men 3, everyone's like the death of the franchise. And they
Right.
waited a few years, and they're able to reboot it with X-Men First Class, a movie that a lot of people, X-Men fans, love, was very successful. Days of Future Past is even more successful.
And they managed to tie
good-
it right into
and
it.
good films. You can hit with these.
Yeah.
You keep the license for Fantastic Four because you only have to hit once. And for our entire topic, we've proven, audiences have proven, they will accept reboots.
Yes.
So if this fails miserably, which it will, they've got the rights for a couple more years. You're going to see this rebooted again because you have to keep trying, because you look at something like Avengers that made $1 billion.
and depending on how the Sony deal with Marvel and their new Spider-Man movie comes out, Fox might look at it.
Yeah,
like that.
Fox
Like,
is
okay.
looking at-
Well, we might want to do that same thing with Fantastic Four.
Right. As long as they're holding on to it. Instead of selling it outright.
Right.
You know, it's the same thing with Sony. Sony got to the point where they said, we're not exactly sure what we can do with Spider-Man. We're not sure if we can afford to do Spider-Man. But as long as we have the rights and we can hold on to some of them, Marvel has to keep giving us money or share the money with us. Fox, I think, will think it's the same thing.
Yeah.
In terms of a story for Fantastic Four, I think the problem is the origin. Like I kept saying, well, don't stop doing the origin movie. I realized the first Fantastic Four movie doesn't have the origin in it, does it?
yes. It has them going to space, the cosmic rays, but Doom goes with them.
I don't remember. I remember so little of
Matter of
that
fact, because
first
Doom
film.
finances... Doom is working with them. And
I
all
know
five
Doom's with
of
them.
them,
I mean, that's
all
a
five of
part
them
of
go
the-
to space. The cosmic rays come through, and they get struck because
I remember.
Johnny is...
I remember more of 2 than the first one.
Because Ben is on the outside of the ship. That's why it affected him more and different than the rest of them.
God, I don't remember that at all.
I haven't seen that since it was in theaters. Same thing. I saw a little bit of
I've seen
Number
pieces,
2.
I've seen pieces of
like
2.
the dance scene when.
The dance scene.
Number 2 was
That
a
needs
pilot.
to
Number
ru-
2.
They need to stop doing dance scenes
In movies?
comic book movies.
Yeah, no comic book movies. It's never worked out.
That's what they were talking
Spider
about with
emo, clubbing
Reed.
Reed. I remember
Iron
more of
Man.
2. Oh God, Because 2's on FX all the time.
Yeah, oh yeah.
So I'll have it in the background here and there once in a while just to pop on for a couple of minutes. And
The Silver Surfer's cool in it, but that's about
well,
it.
that's
Yeah.
the problem. What I've said with Fantastic Four, the problem is when you do the origin movie, it sucks because you have to waste too much time on an origin that isn't very interesting.
Mm-hmm.
It's when the origin is you got to spend 30 minutes for them to figure out. Oh my, we're powered. What's this is weird. Oh, I can stretch. Oh, I can turn invisible. Oh, my penis is rocky. Whatever. It's boring. It's just a boring time. But you can't just have them go into. If you're going to follow in the narrative of them going into space or a teleporter accident or whatever you want to do, and they get their powers, you can't then cheat the audience of that really boring time of watching them figure out that they're powered now.
Right.
For me, drop yourself right in the middle of it.
Do you think that's
They
why
already have
Marvel's
it.
doing so well? Is because even their origin stories, you're dropped right in the middle of it?
It's the origin stories that they have are much more interesting. Iron Man's origin story is much more interesting.
Yes, but I mean,
Because
even
it's
Ant-Man.
it's an action. But that's the thing. It's not an origin story. The suit's already built.
The suit's already built. Hank's already been a...
He just finds
He
Scott.
doesn't have to do the thing where he's trying to figure it out. The origin for that is a montage
Yes.
because there's two people who already know how to use the suit.
Right.
Yeah.
It's very simple to
But
He's
even-
not the original Ant-Man.
Exactly. There's not the growing pains of it, which is the problem with a lot of origin movies, is the problem with origin movies. X-Men succeeds because the origin, and this is Stan Lee's original thing, he was tired of doing origins. Well, they're just born that way.
Yeah.
Now I can skip all the stuff of how they get their powers. Now I can get into how do they work as a team and that sort of thing.
Right.
That's what Fantastic Four to me as a first film should be. They're already superheroes. They're already saved the world 3 times over. If I'm doing a Fantastic Four film, I open the movie on Earth with them fighting Mole Man as a
Classic.
yeah, it's number
first
1
issue.
as a homage to number 1.
Right.
Get them the fuck off of Earth and go into space and,
Deal with
and
Kang.
use anything.
Yeah.
Whether you do
Dude, the
Kang,
Skrulls. To me, that would be really
you can do
interesting.
Kang, you
Yeah,
can
it's
do
a different universe. So.
you can do Terrax as a herald. I mean, there's a lot that's there. I'm actually going to find the post that I put last week because I
Well, here's the thing with one of the things Marvel does so well. With like Guardians of the Galaxy, you know, there was the origin of all these characters, but you're learning about how each one of those characters got to be within like a 2-sentence.
well, that's the thing.
Structure.
There's the origin part that I'm talking about, the getting used to it.
Yeah.
We see Star-Lord, we see Peter
Quill.
being abducted.
Right.
And then he's Star-Lord.
Yes.
Immediately. We don't go through, oh, I'm in space. This sucks. Oh, I want to go to Earth. This sucks. How do I use this? How do I fly a ship? How do I shoot a gun? How do I get this mask?
Right. Well, even like
All of that
Rocket,
is
it was
gone.
like Rocket, you know, made a
They
quick.
just,
There was a
they
quick
just
quip
introduced
of,
Rocket, but
you
there's
know,
no...
I've been torn apart. I didn't ask to be torn apart and put back together and experimented on. Okay, now we know what happened to Rocket. You know, there was that point when he's putting on the prison outfit, and you see, you know, the little implants and whatnot.
It's a statement so that the viewers can be like, huh, that sounds interesting. Then they'll go to the stores or whatever,
Yeah.
buy the books and say, oh, I want to know more of Rocket's backstory and actually how he got
So
to
what
it.
I
Black
ended up-
Widow's another good one. You know, I mean,
Well,
you
yeah,
didn't
she's
have an
just
origin
trained by
story
a
for
thing.
her, but you did get over the course of all the movies she's been in. You've learned a little bit more about her past.
What I put on Facebook this weekend or whatever as to why Fantastic Four fails. I said it's always the origin, it's always on Earth, and it's always Doom. This is start the damn movie with a fully fledged super team family that has saved the world once or twice. Get them to start by fighting Mole Man as an introduction to the audience to get used to the powers and what they can do. And then they fight Terrax or Galactus or Annihilus or whatever, but put them in space, but get them off of Earth. The second movie is the quieter one with the complex relationship with Doom. I think that's the one that you have
Doom and
much
Sue
more.
and all.
Doom and Sue, Doom and Reed, the family dynamic, the Johnny and Ben fighting and stuff like that.
Yeah.
You make that a smaller film. You make that the Earth film. And if you do the first one with Terrax coming or some herald,
Right.
and the end of it is just there's something coming and it's a lot worse. There's your third big
You
film.
build it. You do like
You build it to
You do like the
Galactus.
Thanos thing. You
build
kind
it
of
like
build
anything.
it.
The-
Just like Cap.
Yeah.
You have the red. I mean, granted, you start out with a heavy hitter of his rogues, but
When you-
you have Shield in a general.
a lot of this type of stuff is based off the stuff in the Ultimate Universe. The origin in the new Fantastic Four movie is very much like the Ultimate Fantastic Four origin. When they used Galactus in the Ultimates comics, when they did Ultimate Nightmare and Ultimate something else or whatever, there was this triptych. And the end of it was whatever they were fighting in the first one, at the end, it says the name Galactus.
Right.
And that's it. And you realize there's something coming and it's bad.
Right.
And it teases you for farther and farther. If you're a fan, Avengers, this is Iron Man's great post-credit scene, is because there's a tease at the end with him saying the Avengers Project.
Right.
If you're a fan, you know what that is.
Mm-hmm.
If you're not a fan, you're going, what the hell is he talking about?
Well,
That's
yeah,
interesting.
just-
What am I going to see? And that's it. Just it
That little
becomes a
tease
threat.
of, you're a part of a bigger world.
If you do the
It's just-
first one as some herald of Galactus, they are going into space. They're fighting this thing through the solar system, whatever the hell you want, and they defeat it. And upon its defeat, it says, "You think I'm bad? There's something worse coming."
Yeah.
You're telling people there's going to be something. You can invest
Stay
in this.
tuned.
There's going to be more.
Yes.
The second one with Doom, that can be a very small part of it. It's Doom that discovers that there's something coming. It's
Right.
Galactus' ship, whatever you want to do. If they decide to do the Annihilation Wave, whatever they want to use, they can use. And then when you get through 3 films, you have 3 or 4 X-Men films, and then I said, get together and do. You can't do the Kree Skrull War because of the Kree, but you can do some sort of stand-in. You can use the Shi'ar.
Right.
I thought the best thing you could do is you have the Skrulls on Earth, and the Shi'ar invades Earth to kill the Skrulls.
Right.
Because if you put...
Because they can detect them or whatever.
Well, the idea, if you say, okay, the Skrulls are in this part of the galaxy, the Shi'ar are in this part of the galaxy, and Earth is between the two of them. Earth is almost like a border, a demilitarized zone. If the Skrulls have infiltrated worlds that are in Earth's galaxy...
Earth gets caught up in their world.
Earth gets caught up in... The Shi'ar are basically like, we're going to annihilate Earth because the Skrulls are already on it, and they're going to use it as a jumping off point. You have them at the X-Men join up with them. You have Reed trying to find out the Skrulls, what it is. His technology to try and find Skrulls, the Shi'ar are forced to use Reed's technology. So we won't destroy Earth, but we have to take your technology to try to use it. And you have the X-Men and the Fantastic Four fighting this alien force with another alien force that you're not too particularly trusting of. And that becomes your big war.
Right.
And you can set it in space and you can set it on Earth. You can see these multiple different, it's the end of half of the Star Wars movies. There's like a whole bunch of shit happening on a whole bunch of different worlds. There's 3 things in Jedi, and there's 3 places, and you keep going to it so you don't get caught in one place over and over again. You're here. I mean, you can be fighting on the moon, you can be fighting in space, you can be fighting on the Earth.
Do you split the team up and have
That's it. You split everybody up.
Yeah.
I mean, that's why when you have the X-Men, I've said it when I was thinking of it. I said that opening scene for that movie should be the Shi'ar show up and they kill Wolverine, and when Wolverine dies, you realize he's a Shi'ar. He's a Skrull. He's been replaced.
Yeah.
And now you have the X-Men have an invested interest because before the Shi'ar go and just annihilate the Skrull Empire, they have to find their friend or friends, whoever's been taken over. I mean, there's a lot of...
That would
different
set up
stuff.
the whole new Avengers.
You're setting
Secret
up a
Invasion
whole thing.
shit.
Yeah, you're doing Secret Invasion, but you get to do it here.
Well, that would be awesome. That'd be a way to kill off the Hugh Jackman Wolverine, and then bring in a new one too.
You can if you want, or you can do a bunch of different things. I mean, it's just...
So, okay.
Come back way
Like I
later
said, I
and
just
do an
keep-
Old Man Logan a long time after.
We keep doing Fox's job.
Right, no, right? So, since this is a reboot, and we're telling the origin story yet again, do you think that's why people are now getting this stigma with reboots? Is because, oh God, I'm going to learn the same thing again?
The mainstream audience is coming to terms with, hey,
I already know
what
this.
what the comic book audience already knows, that comic books get rebooted nowadays
Uh-huh.
over and over again. So now movies are going to get rebooted over and over again.
Because, I mean, the reboots, and now we're getting reboots of reboots.
That's what's going to tire everybody of superhero movies. I
Yes.
think. The continuous, having it a good distance apart is fine, but when the last 5 years, or how many years between Amazing Spider-Man 2 and then this new one?
Let's see, 2 was
Is it
last
coming out?
year, so it'll be
2017?
3 years.
Yeah, it's not a continuous story though either.
Right.
Well, only 3 years. You'll have 3 different Spider-Mans in 6 years, I think. 7
Something
years?
like that, yeah.
That too.
The Spider-Man 3 is what, 2000?
And hopefully they don't jump right into an origin story.
Well, that was
Again,
just it. I think that's what
because
Marvel said.
they've already
if
said
they're
that-
talking with Kraven about Kraven as the villain,
Yeah.
Marvel's already said they're not doing another origin story for Spider-Man. We're going to meet Spider-Man as he already has his powers.
Which is good to bring him into.
Yeah, 'cause really, how many times do you need to see an old man get shot?
yeah.
Right.
We've already seen Martin Sheen get shot. We've already seen who was
That
in the first
guy.
one? Yeah, that character actor in the first one who got shot. So it's really only,
Wasn't it?
He died too, though. Actually,
Wasn't it John Snyder? Or was that just Smallville? Well, I thought John Snyder was...
No. Uncle Ben in the
Yeah.
Sam Raimi one? No.
It's been so long ago now.
What's that character actor do?
But then
I
he
can
got
see
killed.
his face. But...
We saw him get killed twice because they go back to it in Spider-Man 3. And then we see it again.
Oh, flashbacks.
Marvel loves to kill old people.
So, but now we're talking with, we have Ghostbusters coming out. We have...
I don't think that necessarily should have been or had to be rebooted, but it's a new generation, and it's been so long since that franchise was around.
Yeah, I think it's funny. People love that franchise, and they're like, "Oh, it's such a big franchise." And I was like, "It had two movies."
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, the cartoon was the biggest thing that everything,
But now we're
in
getting
a game that's in continuity.
Yeah.
two
Well, we
movies
talked
with
about-
two different...
Yeah, that's the problem. Is we were talking about that. I don't remember if you were on that one. Where I said, I don't understand why it's a reboot instead of a franchise.
Right.
Because it's so easy to just put yourself into that world. You don't have to go through the origin of Ghostbusters again. You can have this female team that buys a Ghostbusters franchise.
Right.
And
Maybe that is it, and they're just throwing
it
out
isn't.
a...
They've admitted that it is a hard reboot.
They have the
previous
same names,
Ghostbusters-
too.
Yeah, the previous Ghostbusters does not exist.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I know,
and
that's
there's
why
another-
every
and there's a
Ghostbusters
second
fans
film
went,
because then I said you could
Yeah.
have both of these films exist. It's very easy. It's kind of like Star Wars. You can have
Yeah.
a trilogy and 3 anthology films exist in 6 years because there's different places to put it into a universe that already exists.
Yeah, I mean, could you imagine having a Ghostbusters in Chicago or L.A. or something?
You have a
That'd be
female
great.
Ghostbuster. You have a male Ghostbusters. You can have a black Ghostbusters. You could do whatever. You can adapt Ghostbusters into the genre that you
Ghostbusters
wanna
Jamaica.
San Diego.
do.
During Comic-Con.
During Comic-Con.
That's when
that'd be cool.
Ghostbusters movie happens.
But yeah, I
Start
mean, it's just...
zapping everybody. On the floor.
Everybody during an actual
You
Comic-Con
want to cross the
are
streams?
extras.
Yeah.
Let's see.
Look at all these fools.
And the cross the streams joke, if they tried to put that into the female one, it's just not going to come across as funny. But what do you think of them calling Star Wars Episode 7 a reboot?
It's not.
It's not.
It's a continuous storyline.
Yeah.
Well, it's a reboot in the sense of they're making movies again. Yeah, that's the thing.
Yeah,
they're also
but
using
the
using the words
terminology is-
reboot wrong. This is
Yeah.
the Jurassic World article where it says the guy that wrote it said that it's obviously a Jurassic Park 2 and 3 don't exist because they're ignoring it. And I said, you don't understand the definition of the word ignore.
Right.
They're just ignoring it in that nothing in their story is affected by what happened in Jurassic Park 2 and 3. Nothing
Correct.
that happens on the second island affects the Jurassic
But
World
didn't
story.
they say that in Jurassic World? Didn't they make a reference to it being a preserve?
Yeah.
Somewhere in there. Yeah, I mean, Colin Trevorrow had to come out and say, we are not throwing away 2 and 3.
Right.
All those events happened in our universe. So we just don't need to reference them at all.
It's 20 years
We're just
past
going
it.
back to the
Yeah.
original island, too.
Right.
It is also
They have
because the
reference. The
idea there
Spinosaurus.
that in 2 is when if you look at the end of 2, that's when the world finds out that InGen has made dinosaurs and they exist and they're there and everybody knows that there's an island off the coast of Costa Rica that has a bunch of dinosaurs.
Right.
That lends a lot to the story of people being used to the idea even now that there are dinosaurs on an
yeah.
island. And that's what
That many people on...
But again,
Island
people
Nublar
kept
and
referring to
world.
it as a reboot because it was going to take away 2 and 3. It didn't.
Right.
Even Terminator Genesis, which erased everything, it erases it by fooling around with the timeline. They're saying, well, when the movie starts, 2 and 3 happened,
Yes.
and 4, but
then
because of the very convoluted events of the movie, it erases them.
Right. The timeline splits off to a different...
Which is a creative way of doing that.
Yeah.
Well, in
Star
a way,
Trek
that's...
did the same
I was
thing.
just going to say that.
Star Trek is technically a reboot, but it's also technically not because supposedly the timeline up to the point where Romulus comes through, or what the hell was the bad guy's name?
I thought it was Romulus.
There's Romulan. Yeah.
Sounds
no,
right.
Romulus is the
No?
planet. Whatever his name is. Nemo. Was it Nemo? I'm sure.
Leonard Nimoy?
Nero?
Nero.
Nero. It was Nero. I think it was Nero. I don't know. Now I want to
Seen
look
that
it up.
forever.
Anyway, at the point in which he shows up, he affects the timeline. He changes the timeline.
Yes.
Because he kills
Kills
Captain
Picard.
Kirk's father.
Well, hell,
Kills
and
Picard.
Spock comes through too.
Well, that's what I was going to say.
Right. Spock comes through. So
Spock chases him through.
Spock chases him through.
And that's where the timeline...
That's it. The timeline gets broken there because in the original series, Kirk's father is still alive. That's why he goes to the academy when he does. That's why he gets to the rank of captain the way that he does. He doesn't meet Spock until, because he's not in the academy at the same time as Spock in the original series, because he goes to the academy first. The line when Captain Pike tells him, you should have gone to the academy years ago or whatever, when they're in the bar, that's when he would have gone.
Right.
But because his father isn't there, his life is very much different. That's where the divergence is. Technically, Star Trek Enterprise should still exist.
Correct. And everything in between.
Yeah. But once you get to that point, it all goes hayward.
Yes. Are there any...
Haywire, not Hayward.
Well, but see, some reboots have been, and reboots have been going on for decades. It's not like this new trend that's happened in Hollywood.
No.
It's because,
well, the horror genre is notorious for it.
Speaking of which,
it is.
They just announced that they're going to reboot Nightmare on Elm Street again.
That's the other thing. Like, it doesn't need a reboot.
No.
If he's an existing, he's a supernatural force of horror.
They just want to call it a reboot, just like
Right.
we need a new number one. It didn't make a lot of money, so we need to make it a
people,
reboot.
People haven't seen
This
it.
is a
forever
number one.
or
It starts out a
whatever.
new epic.
Yeah, it's the same thing here. That story is the concept of Nightmare on Elm Street story is designed to be new every single time.
Yes.
You don't have to know. And then what was the first one happens, and the second one has nothing to do with the first one except for him as a character. And then the third one or the fourth one, the Dream Warriors or whatever,
Dream
they go
Warriors
back and
was 3.
find one of the people from the first one. So you can have that opening there, but it doesn't. If it's a bunch of kids seeing Freddy, then
It's all the.
There's
It's just
a bunch
a
of kids
new,
seeing
different
Freddy, yeah.
group of kids. That's all.
Wouldn't it be better than if
The
to reboot
difference
some of
being-
these, just show the original again?
Don't number them. Just say
Well, that's what
it's
Star
like
Wars has seemed to
Nightmare
do.
on Elm Street, whatever.
Well, Star Wars
Freddy's Revenge.
But if you notice,
well, if you look at Star Trek, isn't numbering them.
right? But if you
Star Trek
notice,
is Star Trek,
Wars,
and then Star Trek Edge of Darkness or whatever it is.
if you notice, but StarWars.com and all the others are no longer referring to it as Episode 7. It's now just Star Wars: The Force Awakens.
Well,
Just like
and they probably shouldn't have made that Episode 7 poster for Celebration.
I know. Just like if you look at all of the Marvel films, they're no longer numbering them. Iron Man 3 was the only one. It was Iron Man, Iron Man 2.
Was Thor 2 the
No,
Dark World,
it
or
was
was just Thor
the Dark World.
Oh.
I think it might be Thor 2. And Guardians of the Galaxy is listed as a number 2. also.
Right now, but I think they're only doing that until they actually get a subtitle.
It works when it's a continuous story, when there's
If
story
it's like a
elements
trilogy?
yeah,
No, it
when
is just Thor the Dark World.
it works like that. But when you go past that, or when you are going, or you have plans on rebooting it, because if Hemsworth is done with his contract and he's like, all right, I'm done with Marvel films,
Right.
and they want to still do Thor, then you're gonna have Thor 4. Then you just need to do Thor whatever.
Yeah.
I can't think of Chris Hemsworth and Thor without thinking of that SNL parody of the American Express commercials, where it's like, it's like, oh, they told me I couldn't do this and I did it, and he's like, when I showed up in America, they said I was too pretty to be in Hollywood. When I tried out for
2
Thor,
weeks later.
I tried out. They said I tried out for Thor, and they looked at me and said, "We're looking for a Thor type, not actually Thor."
Yeah.
People told me that I was never going to have sex with women. I had sex with a lot of women because my penis was too big. They said I'd never make it in Hollywood because my penis was too big, and I'd never have sex with women. Well, I had sex with a lot of women.
And then they played that off on vacation.
I know, right? But then a lot of reboots have been successful. You look at the you look at like the Ocean's 11, 12, 13. They were successful films in their own right.
Yeah, but
And they went too long.
Yes.
Well, it's also that original.
Film
The
was-
original material of it was not some beloved thing that people saw 3 years ago.
But what about
It was-
True Grit?
True Grit's the same thing. True Grit's a 25-year-old film,
Do you?
But
Oh,
that-
it's more than that.
at least.
But
Do
that
you-
wasn't
Ocean-
as good as the original. I like the original better.
Do you think that there should be a timestamp of okay, now we can do a reboot of this movie?
No, it's just
Once
look,
that generation that enjoyed that movie is dead, then we can go back and
there are
reboot
reboots
it.
that are successful and there are reboots that aren't, and it's just if you have something where you kind of have to throw away what's there beforehand.
Yeah.
I mean, X-Men First Class in a way is a reboot.
Yes, it
because
is.
It's like, hey, we're going to ignore X-Men 3 because That's a big gigantic pile of hot garbage. And then with the second movie, like, how do we make it so X-Men 3 didn't happen? Ooh, let's do this.
So
Days of Future
you
Past
take that
film.
last movie that was just shit, give it some then you can reboot it quicker. But if that last movie was good,
Well,
give it
technically,
give it like a decade.
if you
I
do,
still love the fact that the two worst Spider-Man films actually killed the franchise. somebody at Sony watched Spider-Man 3 and went, "No, we're not doing this anymore. Nope." Amazing Spider-Man 2. It's dubstep? Really? That's what we're gonna.
No.
Yeah. Ooh, maybe we should. No, let's sell this. Well, let's let this go.
I mean, they were like, remember they had all these big plans. Okay, this is what we're going to do after Spider-Man, Amazing Spider-Man 2. You know, Amazing Spider-Man 2 is going to set up the Sinister Six. That movie,
as big as the plans that they had, didn't fit the success of the first film.
right?
The success of Amazing Spider-Man was not fantastically large.
Yeah.
I mean, it did okay, but it didn't even beat Spider-Man 3,
The only thing that Amazing
which
Spider-Man 2
featured dancing.
yes, it did.
Emo Spider-Man. At a
You
point
just-
in which everybody...
you're done with dancing in movies.
No more dancing in
But I'd say the
superheroes.
reboot for a new number one is not going to make as much as the possible final movie.
Well, that's because everybody was duped after they saw Spider-Man 2 and said, hey, this is good. And then they went and saw Spider-Man 3 and they're like, this is
Yeah.
terrible. This is really, really
history
bad.
repeats.
There's the point where you're supposed to be sad because Norman Osborn is, or Harry Osborn has realized the error of his ways, and he turns around and he starts crying, and everyone's laughing at the screen. You've made a bad film. When you're not invested enough to care about that scene, you're just like, this is no.
Well, you know, one of the things is coming off of Spider-Man
That should
1
be
and 2.
Spider-Man 3. This is no.
Spider-Man, you know, people have been begging for a live-action Spider-Man film for years, and everybody was like, no, it's not going to happen, rights, this, that, and the other. Then finally they went, yes, we're going to make one, and everybody was like, oh my God, this is amazing, because we're seeing Spider-Man.
No, it's just Spider-Man. That's not
I know.
amazing. It's later.
And then Spider-Man 2 happened. Oh, we get Doc Ock. This is kind of cool. You know, they're fighting on top of a subway train. They're doing this, that, and the other. This is really cool. And then by 3 we went, wait, this really isn't good.
Well, no, because it was so convoluted and screwed.
Venom? We're gonna have Venom? Oh,
That was
wait.
the problem.
Venom is
the problem,
smaller than Spider-Man.
The problem with that film is that it wasn't just Venom,
Yeah,
because you introduced Venom, Sandman, Gwen Stacy, emo dancing, whatever.
Sandman.
That's the second thing.
Oh, and then you had
and then
New Goblin.
and then everything on
and
the
the
New
relationship going to shit.
Goblin. Yeah, I mean, it's just there's so much in that film rather than giving you just a Venom film.
yeah,
If you just do the symbiote costume storyline, they would have made even more money than they made, and you would have made a 4.
yeah.
And
Well,
it
if you
would've been-
notice with the Batman movies of the '80s, the more villains they added, the worse the films got.
Yeah, because Batman 2 is terrible.
Yeah.
Batman 2 is good.
Batman Returns is terrible.
It's
Go
a
back
good
and-
movie.
No,
It's
it's
not
not.
bad.
It's
Go
fun.
back and watch it.
It's
though.
fun.
terrible.
It gives us awesome Michelle Pfeiffer as Catwoman.
The Penguin looks great.
That's the only part that I have no problem with Danny DeVito, but it's
Yes,
the
you
Penguin
did.
isn't
I've
that
heard
great.
you. You're like, Danny DeVito sucks. No, I think Batman Returns is terrible. I've always thought it was terrible. I just hate the whole, they set up Batman as the bad guy, and then it's like he flips on a radio switch. And all of a sudden Gotham's like, oh, okay, everything's fine. It's like they dug themselves into a hole and they couldn't get it.
So the Man of Steel was a reboot in a sense. No, I guess it really was because
No, it's
they,
a total
they
reboot,
yeah.
Superman Returns is not a
Superman
reboot.
Returns is not
Superman Returns is a 3 through Quest for Peace are gone.
right.
And
He went to
when
space
When
now,
he leaves
and this
space
is-
at the end of 2, it's like, he left for a long time.
And
And then he came back and he's a deadbeat dad.
did and he's the Christ in him. Do you think that the Man of Steel worked as a reboot?
I liked it. I liked it. I had no problem with the coda or whatever. I don't care about that. It doesn't affect my not understanding, but just enjoyment of the movie. The only part that threw me off was at the end when he snaps Zod's neck and then it cuts.
Spoilers.
There's so many people that had trouble
And
with
then,
that.
and then
I
cut,
had
and then
trouble
cut
with it.
straight to
Okay.
Happy Clark in the middle of the fucking
Yeah.
desert meeting with the military.
Hey, Army guys, stay away from me.
Oh, and then you get
he's
the
crying.
lieutenant out there who's like all swooning over him. It's like,
Well, there's so many problems with that. It's the same thing as every Superman film. It's like the Army shows up like, hey, we have missiles and guns. Did you not just see me blow up a whole fucking city by myself? I knocked over 80 billion buildings. I went down to India and I fought this gigantic robot and I crushed that stupid thing. All the guys that you couldn't stop, I snapped his goddamn fucking neck.
Yeah.
And you're coming at me with a rocket launcher? Come on, really?
No.
It's the George Reeves Superman. You know, he's in the apartment or whatever, and the bad guys are shooting at him, and then they throw the gun.
Yeah.
The bullets that are traveling at supersonic speed don't penetrate his hide. But if I throw this at like
Maybe
4
I can
miles
knock
an
him
hour,
out.
It's a last hope. We know it's not going to work.
that's the parody
It's
film
the
you
front.
should do. You know, the spider. I'm Superman. Off this chest, and then they throw the gun and he falls over and he dies. I didn't think that would work.
Now they were saying that
They're treating him like a boss character in any video game where it's just like you have to hit him 40 times. The first 39 times don't really do anything to him, but you hit that 40th one and it goes slow motion. It's just,
His power levels are finally down.
yeah, it's just that's the way. It's like I've shot you 135 times by machine gun. 136 can put you down.
Count the shells. Suck
yeah,
it
I
up.
got to wear you down.
It's a force field, right? No, it's just invulnerable skin.
Well, they were saying Batman vs Superman isn't a sequel, but apparently it's got to be if you see Bruce Wayne running in through Metropolis and.
Well, no, it's not a sequel. It's just the next movie in this DC cinematic universe.
It's sort of a pseudo sequel.
It just happens to have Superman in it. It would be like saying that Incredible Hulk is a sequel to Iron Man.
But
It's not. It was
some
the
of
next
the
movie
events
in
that
the
had
universe.
the final events of Man of Steel affect Bruce Wayne in this new movie.
It's not a direct. You can't call it a sequel because it's not going to be just a Superman movie. It's the next movie. This is what Marvel's doing now.
Yes.
It's the next movie in line in their universe, and that's it. It's like
But-
Iron Man 3 is not a sequel to Avengers, but obviously a lot of the stuff that happened in Avengers affects Iron Man 3.
Isn't that usually the definition of a sequel? That something that affects from one movie to the next.
But it doesn't have the Avengers in it. You can't call that movie. If you call Iron Man 3 Avengers 2,
Right.
you're going to have people riot in the streets because there's no other Avengers in it.
War Machine's in it, and he's an Avenger now. So, anyways, I mean, it seems like there's more and more reboots and sequels and stuff that good original films are now becoming, whether they're a big budget original film or not, they're becoming independent films in a way. They're getting less screen time. They're showing.
They're not
up.
getting made. It is original concept. This summer is going to kill everything for original concept because any original concept film died. Tomorrowland
In the summer, yes.
Tomorrowland is an original concept.
Yes.
Died.
Yeah.
People said, "Oh, this is a good movie. A little heavy-handed, but it's okay. I like what? No, didn't make any money. Okay." Jurassic World. No one's going to see that. That's a 30-year-old. Oh, it's the biggest opening of all time. Mm-hmm. Okay. Well,
Minions was.
Yeah. Minions is at least
But
a
that's
part
not
of a
really
franchise.
original. Yeah, it's.
That's the saying.
No, it's not original, but
there's an original. Even Pitch Perfect 2, which blew away all of the money that Pitch Perfect made. I mean, it's hard. Right now, you couldn't make Pitch Perfect
Right.
as a film because it's not it's not an existing alternative media franchise, and it's not a sequel.
Well, when a Pitch Perfect first came out, it barely did anything in the theater. It wasn't
That's what I'm
until
saying.
it got. Well, even
But
Mad
now
Max
you
was
wouldn't, you wouldn't even be able to make that film.
Yeah.
And as much as everyone's like, "Oh, Mad Max didn't make that much money.
No.
Didn't even win its first weekend."
Now, Mad Max would be considered. Would it be considered a reboot or just a continuation?
It's a continuation. George, he said that it is an exact continuation.
Yeah, because it's just like James Bond. You switch the character, you switch the actor playing the character, but it's not. We're rebooting the franchise
because it's George Miller. George Miller has said that it is there. It's up to you to interpret whether that is Mel Gibson's character or the name Max is there as almost like a Bond sort of thing that people have
Right.
adapted to the idea that James Bond is a name that MI6 uses for its agent. That if you become an agent, you have your identity erased.
Bond comes
You're
with
given
007.
007. The 007 is always James Bond.
Right.
That's his name. So that's it. Your
It's the
identity
code
is
name
related.
that he
Yeah,
used.
that sort of thing.
So then, in that case, would Casino Royale be a reboot? Because it did kind of
they
give
would
more of an
all
origin.
be reboots. I mean, Casino Royale, yes, is basically they took. It can be a reboot in the sense that you see his first kind of mission. You see it at the beginning,
Or it goes
He
back
kills
before all the others.
No, well, it can't go back before all the others because it's not 1960. Your technology isn't the same.
Yeah.
It's a reboot. I mean, for all intents and purposes, it's a reboot. You got through the Pierce Bronson stuff, and you're like, this is dumb. And
Oh, come on. You didn't like the cars skating on the ice?
I actually did not like any of the Pierce Brosnan ones.
Really?
Yeah. I didn't even like GoldenEye. I thought GoldenEye was dumb, too.
Maybe it's just because I like the car, like the Vanquish and that.
There's parts of the ones, and they weren't terrible, but when I saw Casino Royale, I'm like, yep, get this. I want this. This is what I want. This is perfect. This is great. And all three of those. Quantum of Solace is a little, people don't like it at all.
Which is
It
one of
wasn't
the
that
first
bad.
sequels to a Bond film.
It is the first direct sequel to a Bond film that really references more than an element or two of the ones before. I think there's a Roger Moore one that are kind of connected, and then one of the Timothy Dalton ones I think has a connection to an early one.
I think, yeah, but not a direct.
Well, it's basically it's something to do. Like I think the last Timothy Dalton one was the one where Felix dies. So this has to be a reboot because Felix is in it. But whatever. There's somewhere in there. I remember them. There's somewhere in there. There is a direct reference to something before, but it's not as heavy as Casino Royale. His situation is directly attributed to losing Vesper in the first movie and what he's gone through. When you get to the end of Casino Royale, or you get to the end of Quantum and Solace, he's back on the Force. He leads him to Skyfall, the stuff that happens in Skyfall, and you have this Spectre piece that's kind of the undercurrent for all of this that's kind of there that you haven't really seen.
Is there a reboot? We'll wrap things up now, but is there a reboot that you guys have seen that's coming down the pipeline that you're excited to see? Or that you're
Star
like,
Wars.
I'm so glad that they were going to reboot this.
I'm so glad they're rebooting Star Wars because those 6 films are stupid.
I can't think of anything down the pipeline.
They're gonna reboot Episode 1.
I mean, because
They're gonna redo Episode 1 through 3
with Jake Lloyd and all of them now.
Oh God. Jake Lloyd and his little Hitler
have you
mustache.
speaking of it, have you seen the pictures where it's like he could definitely be a Sith now? You see it,
He's
when he
got a
grew
little-
up.
He's got a little Hitler mustache.
Yeah. But is it, Chris? I didn't think that you've seen that. You've like, I want this to happen.
Man from Uncle, actually.
But Man from Uncle, that was
I
more
mean,
of a
it's
TV series.
yes, but
It's still a reboot.
Still-
It's an
Yeah.
adaptation or an adaptation.
Matter of fact, Channel 13 has started showing Man from Uncle. I caught it the other night. Anything you've seen that you're
Well, I think a next Bourne movie isn't a reboot. It's just, hey, this didn't work. We want Matt Damon back.
well, it's going to have both of them.
It's Matt Damon.
But I thought they said it was going to be both of them.
No, they wanted to do that.
Well, the original
When they
idea
did,
was
when
that,
they did the Jeremy Renner one, they're like, okay, we can make 2 films with Jeremy Renner, or 3
and then
films,
the
and
third
we'll
one
do-
will be
We'll do the 2 of them.
yeah.
As far as we know, the next movie is just Matt Damon. Matt Damon.
I knew I was waiting for it. So I mean, see, that's just it. The 3 of us, we go to movies, like a lot of movies during the summer and winter. And Mikey, you usually will hit even more.
The fall and spring, we just don't go at all.
Well, now we're starting to more.
No, we go to movies a lot.
Yeah,
Or try to, anyway.
it's not like Ethan who goes to 2 movies a
A
year.
movie.
Only
can sit through the first half of the Lego movie before he turns it off.
I know. But there's no sequel or no reboots that you're going, I'm glad they're rebooting that. I want
I don't
to
even
see
think
that.
I don't
there is one.
care. Usually.
Yeah.
I'll go see it. It's not like
When you see
this is so cool.
when
They're
it's
rebooting
something-
something,
when it's
but I don't have a
something like-
fan appreciation like that for anything.
Right.
When you see something like Man from Uncle, you're like, I like that concept. That's a good idea to make that into a film now.
Mm-hmm.
That's the sort of thing I look at and go, okay. Like, I wrote, but I did an outline for like, if they Jam, there you go.
Jim's not.
They did,
I guess it is a
adaptation of
reboot.
cartoon.
It's an adaptation.
If they did a like a serious take on Land of the Lost, I was like, dude, you could totally do this like Total Dark. It would be awesome. But no, you have to make it a comedy where it's all about poop. Choco poop.
But this is kind of my point that
Choco poop.
do you think that other not even just within the comic book or the sci-fi or the genres that we usually talk about on the show, but just in general, because I know when True Grit was coming out, I went, I really don't care that I don't. Why are they rebooting this when you can go back and watch a amazing
Because
first
it's the
film?
only way to make a Western now.
Yeah,
You can't make an original Western. You have
it's hard to.
You have.
I mean,
to
Young
have,
Guns is going to come down and be
Probably.
Oh God.
I wouldn't be shocked that you would see if someone's going to make a Western.
it's not going to make a lot
They're
of
going
money.
to attach to it. Yeah, but here's,
Period.
this
You can
goes
make
to
it.
this is something that when years ago when they did Macross 2 for Robotech, and you watch the story and you're just like, this really doesn't have a lot to do. It's way spent in the future, and you find out what the story of it was is that they had written kind of this outline of this story, and no one would finance it.
Right.
And when they said, "Oh, it's a Robotech story," oh, okay.
No, yeah, no.
And they rewrote the third act to include the Hulk of the SDF-1, and the other pilot is a Zentradi and stuff like that. And they admitted they couldn't get any money unless they made it into a franchise. They adapted it into a franchise that already existed.
Right.
You're making a Western. The last Western that was like big budget. Oh, we made 310 to Yuma. No one saw it. Okay, well, now when you're making a Western, we want to make a Western. You're just going to adapt an old one.
Hey,
or you have to be...
The Long Ranger was made.
You don't really
Yeah.
have those
Exactly,
actors
an
anymore,
adaptation.
Yes.
An adaptation of something. You have the same thing. The only person that seems to be able to make a Western or something set in a Western that's original is going to be Quentin Tarantino. That's it. And we'll see how that does. But if you're setting out like, I want to make a good Western, at this point, you're going to have to do something. You know, I'm shocked they haven't redone.
You have
The
to
Man
have
with No Name.
aliens or something.
Well, no,
over there.
the idea of if you're going to do it, you have to do The Man with No Name,
Right.
Outlaw Josie Wales,
The good, the bad, the ugly. Yeah.
because you have Hollywood now is saying if there isn't a connection to something that's already existing, we're very hesitant to do it unless it's a drama.
And then you're just going to pick the hell part of it and say, oh,
right,
well, this
and
is
then you're
going to
have people that are just like, yeah, it's not Eastwood.
You don't have those actors anymore that can portray a Westerner as
You don't think George
so
Clooney
dirty.
can do?
No, everybody's too pretty.
Yeah. There's no longer
dirt.
that grit or
Yeah.
yeah.
No, there was grit. It was True Grit.
Just true grit.
Well, that's what you
Which
had.
did
no,
well.
no
I mean,
John Wayne.
it got
True Grit.
It's too old.
I enjoyed True Grit, and especially because I couldn't understand half of it.
You're going to get your book.
What the hell
Jeff
is that guy
Bridges
talking?
could
What is Jeff?
do
Yeah,
it.
because Jeff Bridges is not a good-looking human being. That's going to be a great casting call. We need ugly people for a Western.
But I mean,
all the Westerners are now comedy Western or Western comedies.
And that did so well.
is there anything that you would want
Well.
to see rebooted?
No.
Transformers.
Which
Can't-
it's
I
going
can't-
to.
Think of anything.
Well, it's not
to
getting
be
rebooted. It's getting a
rebooted.
sequel.
I mean, the adaptation of Voltron would be awesome to see, but that's been a long time coming. Sort
Well,
of
yeah.
like how Robotech.
Every year, there's that panel at Comic-Con. The latest news on the Robotech live action. What's the news? Well, a couple years ago, Topher Grace said he wanted to do it or whatever. Not Topher. What's his face? Tobey Maguire.
Three's
Yeah.
Company, the movie starring Owen Wilson.
No, you just
Wow.
put a
I'm hanging out in an apartment with two hot chicks.
you put what's his name in the
Ben
role of his
Stiller.
dad.
Ben Stiller will be Larry.
Three's Company now would be just lesbian fan fiction.
Oh God,
All
yeah.
it would be. Kate Upton as the Suzanne Summers character. I'm
So-
an actress, guys.
Is there anything that you would want if you had the chance to sit down with all of the Hollywood studio execs, the heads of the heads, and they were saying, you know, here's our lineup. We got all these movies. Do you think? Would you tell them, please
Fine.
stop with the reboots? You're
You're
fine.
fine. No, because it's not going to work.
Do you think
Here's
that?
the thing: until audiences stop going, it's going to. Everyone keeps talking about the superhero bubble. It's going to burst. It's going to burst. It's going to burst. It's not bursting. Why? Because people keep going.
Right.
Why do they keep making shitty films? Because you buy Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. You go to
I
Fantastic
didn't
Four.
buy it.
You
Okay,
bought it
Mikey and I
somewhere.
will be going to Fantastic.
You're going to
Four.
go to Fantastic Four, and they're going to be like, "Well, we only spent $19 million on this because we're lying and saying we spent 100, but we didn't because we couldn't because we shot it really quickly." Poor Miles Teller.
Yeah.
I had a career.
Yeah, Michael B. Jordan too, and Kate Mara,
Kate Mara didn't really have a career.
But did you? I mean, Mike Miles came out and said, in
Jimmy
it-
Bell. They all have
yeah.
decent careers right
Not
now.
anymore.
They came out and said,
You're gonna have
Miles
some,
came
you're
out and
gonna have
said
some like real deep drama, and Miles Teller is up for it, and they're gonna look at him and go, "Yeah, but you did Fantastic Four."
But did you see his tweet? It was like, well, the critics are going to hate this movie, but you should still go see it.
At least he's legit. Because I'm
And
sure
then the
he had
director
fun.
comes out and
Because
says,
at some point, someone like Miles Teller, just like, why Marvel gets some of these people? I like doing indie films. I like to, but I really want to make a lot of money.
yeah.
I just, I'm thinking money. I'm thinking, yeah. Robert Downey Jr. keeps coming back because like I want to do the lawyer movie with Robert Duvall, but I got to pay for it.
Yeah.
What's that? Iron Man 4? How much? $86 million just for me alone? Cool. I'm going to go do the Robert Duvall lawyer movie, and in between, I'm going to go do 14 days of sitting in a suit and get paid $86 million for it. All the money Chris Evans is making, he's using so he can try and talk about making his own film.
Snowpiercer?
Yeah, Snowpiercer.
Well, I mean, the money that RDJ had from all of it, he started his own production company.
You don't know him. It's Robert Downey Jr. Don't use the acronym.
Oh, you can't use the acronym?
No, that's stupid.
I'd say the PR is pushing the actors to, this is good. We had a fun time doing it or whatever. It's sort of like how Spider-Man 3.
Oh yeah, I want that actor that comes out is actually honestly, working with Josh Trank, fucking asshole.
I know.
This son of a bitch didn't show up anytime. He's got these fucking dogs, just shit all over our set and stuff like that.
Did you like the tweet he put out last week about the movie?
The Complete Lie? Yeah.
The movie that I had in mind, it was going to be great. You guys would have loved it. The studio screwed it up.
I've already lost a job because of this film before it even came out. I'm never working again.
Yeah, Michael.
You want to talk about interesting plot lines in Hollywood? That's the one I want to see. Who's going to hire Josh Trank? Written honestly,
yeah.
Who's going to hire him? He's going to have to start financing his own film.
He's going to show up in the VH1 special.
He's going to have to do something.
Leaf carrot.
Him and Megan Fox will get together.
Megan Fox still has a career. She worked for Hitler again. Oh, Hitler's producing this? Okay.
You're going to pay me a bunch of money?
I'll be April O'Neil. Just as long as in the second one you put me in a schoolgirl outfit, because that's not pandering.
So, if everybody got to the end of this one and was wondering why we didn't have a D23 special like I said we were going to at the end of the last episode.
What fucking weekend it was.
I forgot what fucking weekend it was. Oops. So,
I was wondering that. I'm like, that's not next week, is it?
Oops.
Not right.
So tune in next episode, which will be episode 98, when we'll talk about D23. Maybe. Possibly. More than likely. So check us out at facebook.com. And we're at Nerdables Show on Twitter, and nerdables.com. So for Kris and Mikey, we're going to just leave it now.